Hello, I am Broxton, and we are back with another video covering mostly an enhanced risk across a large portion of Georgia, Alabama, southeastern Tennessee, and northwestern South Carolina and southwestern North Carolina. The main threat with this is going to be damaging winds. However, for being a day out, there's still a lot of uncertainty with this severe weather event. So we're going to start by looking at our HRRR model. This is storms that have already happened or now are kind of like ongoing by the time you're seeing this. So there was a tornado outbreak, there's an ongoing tornado outbreak today. However, given the fact it's ongoing, we're not really going to be discussing that too much. There's not really too many updates I can give on it. And we're going to see, as we get into the afternoon hours tomorrow, how on the HRRR across southern Georgia, storms rapidly develop, and even into central Georgia and parts of the Carolinas. But you can see this northern mode, where the enhanced risk is up here. Convection struggles to organize until fairly late in the period, and even then it's not too, it's there, but it's not extremely robust in its coverage or intensity, considering the fact this is what you would think was a cold front you'd expect a squall line. However, it's more broken and just not as robust as you would think, given the environment that I will show you it in a minute. So let's look at that environment. We're going to see, this is our mixed layer cape, and we're going to see how it expands northward. And we can see it gets up here. Northern mode, less instability, but still sufficient. Maybe like 500 to 1500 cape. But the southern mode, we would have mixed layer cape of over 2000 possibly. So that's a pretty strong cape for this severe weather event. And I will say, and I'll show you more about this, I think the area where the greatest environment for severe weather to come together will be across central and southern Georgia. There's still a lot of uncertainty regarding storm coverage, so I'm not confident that's where the greatest severe weather risk will evolve, but at least environment-wise, I think that area that I'm circling is going to have the best potential. So now we're going to look at the upper level shear, our bulk shear, and we're going to see how it comes in, and it's really not too much. You're gonna really struggle to see supercell storms with an environment like this. I mean, like 30 knots of bulk shear. I think if I recall correctly, when we look at the NAM 3K, it might have a little bit more, but still not much. So this is mostly going to be driven by cape. And again, further north, you do have a little more cape, but not a little more shear. But we saw there was a lot less instability there. And all this back here, this is behind the cold front, so that really doesn't matter. So now we're going to look at our 850 jet. This is one of the ingredients important for assessing tornado potential. And we can see this is what's causing our what's causing our ongoing tornado outbreak right now. And we can see that the HRRR shows central and southern Georgia with that low level jet, and it even increasing to perhaps 50 knots. But really it's only in central and southern Georgia. And again, even parts of the Florida as well, but it's really limited to central Georgia and points south. And we can see, it's a fairly strong low-level jet, fairly strong, 40 to 50 knots. That's powerful. That's definitely sufficient for tornadoes. However, that bulk shear is gonna make storms difficult to mature into supercells. So that leaves a big question mark with our tornado threat, as well as storm coverage, as either some models will I'll later show you, they may not have storms form in this environment whatsoever. However, the HRRR, it forms it into a messy mode, and then maybe a little bit of a linear mode, but even then it's kind of just like clusters of storms here and there. They don't truly organize into a line, but they also don't stay discrete and isolated into supercells. So now we're going to look at our storm relative helicity values. And we're going to see that they're not really too favorable for tornadoes, around 100 to maybe 150. And you can see an isolated tornado with that. And these local values are, for the most part, like storms messing with the values, but that low level jet does increase some. So maybe later in the day we could see values of up to 200, over 200, but So I guess it does earlier on in the day, we see values of like 100 to 150. And then as we get later in the evening, we see those values increase. But what's our storm coverage looking like for that? You're trying to remember the exact hours. So we can see, yeah, so there will be storms in the area for this. So perhaps it will be later into the evening, or the greatest tornado threat would evolve. And now we're just going to look at our 0 to 3 kilometer storm relative felicity. And again, we're going to see it paints a similar story, pretty weak during the day into the evening, and overnight hours it does ramp up though. And so yeah, so that's that. We're going to look at the energy helicity index, which again, this is a blend of shear and instability. And we can see how, again, this kind of shows, so maybe it gets a little farther north with the blend of these, but the best environment really struggles to evolve, and evolve for the most part just central and southern Georgia. And I do see that blip up there, so we'll go check out a little farther north. You can see, so again, you can see this narrow quarter of perhaps a more greater instability. But this threat seems much more much more uncertain on the HRRR. You can see even the storm coverage there isn't great in that area that I highlight against areas off to the east. So now we're going to take a look at our NAM3K. And this model is much less aggressive with storm coverage in the further south area. We're just going to take a peek at the further north area since we are already here. You can see in it, again, its convection doesn't really get too robust until later, and even then, that's not the most strong severe weather, definitely not as substantial of a severe weather threat as I maybe initially thought a couple of days ago before the high-res models started to show this weak, not weak, but not as robust convection as I would have initially thought given the environment of these storms. See SRH values. And with this northern mode, they are better, but weaker instability will limit that. To see exactly what the CAPE is on the NAM, but we saw on the HRRR it was much weaker, and that would be similar on the NAM. We'll just see to exactly how much. So it does develop that 250,000 plus instability here, but again, it's still like storms get here that the storms don't really organize as much. So to me, this means this northern mode's very uncertain. Yeah, so we're just going to have to wait and see on that. So now we're going to look further south. And I'm going to show you something really interesting here, right? Remember the HRRR? All those storms across central and southern Georgia. And they just don't develop. Like, they just don't happen. Now I am going to show you one other thing quickly, and this is what leads me to think we will see at least some storms across central and southern Georgia. You can see these other models here, which I generally don't show them as much, but especially with convective allowing, I will sometimes use them when I'm not too sure exactly what storm coverage is going to be like. And we can see how these do initiate those storms across central and especially southern Georgia. This one again too. So while the HRRR I think is the most aggressive with the coverage, I think it's closer to the solution of like no storms across central and southern Georgia. Yeah, so that's something important. So I just wanted to show that, but now we're going to go back to analyzing our the NAM3K. We're going to look at our CAPE further south. You can see robust CAPE, perhaps 2,000 to 3,000. Pretty good instability access, and our shear, again, it's going to be pretty weak, a little stronger, so maybe 30 to 40 knots on the NAM compared to like 30 to 35 knots on the HRRR. But either way, it's going to be more difficult to get supercell storms to form with that. Again, I guess we'll look a little farther north just to make sure if anyone's up here they can see what they're dealing with. Again, still fairly weak. A couple of days ago, models showed this greater shear spreading out ahead of the front, but they're not really showing that anymore. So that's certainly good news that will lead to less severe weather, though there is still pretty good chance for some severe thunderstorms. So we're going to go back and look at the EHI farther south. Again, blend of instability and shear. You can see those values really go. And you can see how, because the NAM has the greater cape, we do see higher values up here. Though, again, storms seem to struggle to form along the front. Such as something to watch, because I think the environment there across the entire area along this front generally is going to be favorable for damaging winds. I just don't know whether the storms are going to become robust enough, even though the background environment seems mostly favorable for it. I'm not 100% sure if this is what is causing it, but sometimes along these cold fronts what will struggle with initiation is sometimes there'll be too much dry air aloft, and I struggle how to figure that out, so I'm not sure that's the case, but that can be something that can limit storms even when there is forcing. Again, I don't know if that's the case with this, so that's just an example of something that could be limiting this or limit other events. Next, we're going to be looking at the lapse rates. And we can see how when we get into the day on Wednesday, they really ramp up. They were increased to like 7 to 8 into the afternoon hours, and that would favor a threat for large hail. However, and there is a slight risk out for this, by the way. You can see the hail. Enhanced risk is for the winds. The one question mark I have with the hail is that because of the weaker shear, supercells, if they form, aren't going to be as robust as supercells. So that might temper the hail threat a little bit despite the favorable instability and lapse rates. That's like my question mark with that. Also, storms interfering with each other on top of that. I think those two things are why we don't have an enhanced risk out for hail. And I don't really suspect those things to change too much, by the way. So I think we'll probably stay at a slight risk for hail. So we saw that. We're going to take a look at our low-level jet or 850 jet. And you're going to notice a very big difference between this and the HRRR. So if we recall, and again, this is what was causing our tornado outbreak that's ongoing right now at the time of recording, 5:51 Eastern Time. We can see the NAM has a much more widespread low-level jet. So remember, HRRR had it around roughly here in points south, and maybe spreading up farther north later on into the overnight hours, but generally here in south. Now look at the NAM, it's way further north. We have a 40-knot low-level jet into those potential storms along the cold front. So, again, like a 40, pretty similar strength of the low-level jet, but it's much more widespread, and that's probably why the 5% tornado extends all the way north compared to being capped out farther south, is that potential for it to increase further north as well. And we're just going to take a quick look at it over the northern area very quickly. And yeah, we can see it's there around 40 knots, so definitely sufficient for tornado potential, but that only getting up to not being like over 50 knots is going to generally limit the outbreak potential, along with several other things for tomorrow. It's not just the low-level shear not being as strong as it was today. And 30 to 40 or even isolated higher amounts, like 35 to 45 knot low-level jet, that's sufficient for tornadoes. Don't get me wrong on that, but for an outbreak, that's really not what you look for, which is good news that we don't have that coming together. I realize I didn't mention this in the intro. We're going to take a brief look at this day 3 set, and also I'm not going to really cover this much, but we do want to take note there's a day 7 risk. I'll probably start talking more about that tomorrow, but especially this far out, if that's the only day that's been added, the videos probably won't be as long, just because going way in depth on like a threat that would then be 6 days out, it's just kind of not worth it, because those things just change. But yeah, so we're going to just take a brief look at this day 3 slight risk. It doesn't look, from my glancing, doesn't look as substantial as either of these 2 days have potential to be. And again, tomorrow, and when I say 2 days, I meant the day that's ongoing right now, and tomorrow, which is what we've been talking about in the video. So we can see there's our once the storms we get into them. This storms could be ongoing across them during the morning hours. You can see there's this line of storms here, but it generally weakens. And again, this threat, it's just seems very conditional, very uncertain. You can see there's a little bit of looping in the hodograph for tornado potential, but weaker instability. Well, let's go a little bit earlier, see if there's a little more out ahead of the line of storms. Still very weak, so but possibly some weaker instability, and like the storm coverage not being as high could be an issue for this event. You can see there. And again, that will be mostly behind the front unless I've missed something in my forecast. Ah, no. Okay, so there. Okay. So that's possibly a band out in front, and then there could be new storms develop along the cold front there. So that still not too high in coverage. So perhaps we could have a morning round of storms, and then around in the evening. I've been focusing mostly on the threat that's ongoing right now in this day 2, so I haven't taken as much a look at the day 3, and I've been doing some of it kind of live, so that's why I kind of wasn't aware of that. I was doing kind of like that forecasting kind of live for you. That's why I didn't catch that mode right away. We're going to look at the energy helicity index. We're going to see how, again, that evening threat might be the best chance for damaging winds, maybe some hail. Let's see if there's some good lapse rates for that. Again, I'm doing this part of it basically completely live. No, not live because this is a video, but I haven't looked at it before the video like the other days, like tomorrow's risk. So you can see that the lapse rates, yeah, okay, so you can see some hail with that. Not substantial hail risk by any means, but so we can see that. So there's sufficient CAPE. Storm coverage isn't great. So now let's just take a look at the shear. And let's see. Again, the best shear is probably going to be behind the front, like 30 to 40 knots of shear likely. So again, that's probably going to suggest it's mostly going to be damaging winds going to be the primary threat. And we're really only going to look at the NAM for today. At least I'll probably make another video discussing this in the what will then be the day 6 risk, but it's currently the day 7 risk. This. Yeah, so that's mostly it. Let's take a look at we'll take a little bit more closer look at the low level shear quickly. You can see the values are going to be definitely sufficient for tornadoes here, especially later in with that morning mode. Not as much in the evening, but that there's not going to be too good directional shear. We're going to be able to show you this in the CAPE in hodographs if you want a looping hodograph for tornadoes, but it's not. You can see hodographs are mostly straight, so that's going to limit our tornado potential despite the favorable SRH values. And we'll just take a look at our low-level jet very quickly. And see, it's definitely sufficient for tornadoes, but other factors seem like they'll likely be limiting this setup. So, yeah, I think that's going to be all I'm going to talk about. So, just a quick reminder of like generally what to expect. Severe weather is going to be likely across what I generally think to be central and southern Georgia. I think is the best area, but really this whole area, especially if the models are underdoing that line of storms, definitely this area can definitely see a good bit of severe weather as well. And then day 3, going to be more isolated in nature, but mainly this area here across portions of North Carolina. That's going to be it for the video. Enjoy the rest of your day.